Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room is often not the wisest? Sometimes, the ones who stay quiet, who don't show off, are hiding a wisdom that surprises everyone. Welcome to today's story on Thrive Tales Daily, where we uncover the art of quiet success. Long ago, in a grand king's court, there was a brilliant minister who always had solutions ready, earning the king's trust and admiration. But this respect also stirred jealousy among others in the court. One morning, in front of everyone, the king laughed and told the minister, "You are wise, but your son is foolish." Imagine the sting of those words echoing through the royal hall. The minister, stunned by this insult, rushed home to confront his son. What he discovered was not foolishness, but a quiet strategy so clever it could outwit even the king. With every small step, the son had been building something extraordinary, while being mocked as a fool. But here's the twist. The very act that made others laugh at him was the secret to his growing success. The minister's son had turned silence and patience into his sharpest tools. What exactly was his hidden plan? Stay tuned, because the answer will change how you think about success forever. The minister couldn't rest after the king's words. All day long, his mind replayed the laughter of the entire court. The image of his son standing there, called foolish by the king himself, weighed heavier than any burden of state. He had spent his whole life building a name for wisdom, and now that same reputation was being questioned because of his own child. By the time he reached home, he was restless and determined to understand the truth. He called for his son with a firm voice. "Tell me," he demanded. "The king asks you every morning what is more valuable, gold or silver. Why do you always say silver? Do you not know gold is far greater?" The boy's calm eyes met his father's stormy ones, and with the innocence of youth, he answered without hesitation, "Father, I know gold is more precious. But there is something you have not noticed." The minister's confusion grew. How could his son knowingly give the wrong answer, inviting ridicule day after day? What possible reason could there be? All he could think of was the king's smirk, the courtiers' laughter, and his own honor slipping in the moment. His patience was wearing thin, yet his son remained steady, almost wise beyond his years. Each morning when the king comes to meet his people, the boy continued slowly. "He calls me over and places 2 coins before me, 1 gold, 1 silver. Then he asks me to choose which is more valuable. And each time I choose the silver coin." The minister frowned, almost unable to process what he was hearing. "But why?" he pressed. "Why would you throw away the chance to claim the gold? The king thinks you a fool, and the court mocks you before my eyes." The son simply smiled, as though the joke wasn't on him at all, but on everyone else. He led his father quietly to his room. There he bent down and opened a wooden box. Inside, the minister's eyes widened in disbelief. Dozens upon dozens of silver coins shimmered in the dim light, stacked together like a hidden treasure. The boy looked at his father and said gently, "Sometimes, being called foolish can be the smartest thing of all." The minister froze. He wanted to ask more, but his son's calm expression made him pause. Could it be that all this time, his child was playing a game far more clever than anyone in the court could see? And if so, what did it really mean about the nature of success? The minister stood in silence, staring at the silver coins gleaming from the box. At first, his mind couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. His son, who had been laughed at day after day, was not collecting shame. He was collecting opportunity. Yet, the deeper the minister thought, the more his heart wrestled with conflict. Could it really be wisdom to let others believe you are a fool? Was this quiet success, or was it something dangerous that could be misunderstood forever? Back at the palace, the courtiers had their own whispers. Some mocked the minister's family openly, delighted to see cracks in his reputation. Others secretly wondered if the boy's stubborn answers meant something more. Why would anyone choose silver when gold is right before them? they questioned amongst themselves. To them, the boy was either absurdly foolish or daringly clever, and both possibilities made them uneasy. The king, however, was the most intrigued. What had begun as a simple morning distraction was turning into a puzzle he couldn't solve. Every courtier loved to laugh at the boy, but the king found himself watching more carefully each day. He wanted to see if this so-called foolish child might one day surprise him. Meanwhile, the minister worried about the balance between appearances and truth. His son's actions were bringing him secret wealth, yes, but they also risked damaging the family's honor. Would the world ever recognize the wisdom behind such humility? Or would they forever be blinded by their need to mock what they couldn't understand? Inside the boy's quiet choice lay a larger question. Is success about grabbing the biggest prize once, or about building something lasting while staying underestimated? The answer was waiting, hidden in silence, biding its time to unfold. Each new morning in the royal court added fuel to the growing tension. The king would once again place the 2 coins in front of the minister's son, and once again, that same calm hand would pick the glittering silver. The court erupted in laughter as usual, but beneath the waves of mockery there was now a new undercurrent: curiosity. How could the boy repeat the same answer day after day without shame? Why didn't he feel the sting of ridicule? Some courtiers began to wonder if the boy's silence was hiding something larger, if perhaps he had uncovered a secret path to quiet success that none of them could see. The minister himself lived caught in 2 storms. On one side, his pride screamed that his son's choices were humiliating him before the entire kingdom. On the other, his heart whispered that there was a wisdom too sharp to be dismissed. Every coin stacked quietly in that wooden box reminded him that appearances could deceive. Yet how long could this game continue before the king grew tired of it? The king, too, felt the tension building. At first, the ritual was amusing, but the boy's steady certainty unsettled him. Was this child merely simple-minded, or was he mocking the throne itself with every silver coin he chose? Questions crowded the king's mind, and with them came a decision. The game could not go on forever. One day, the truth would have to be tested. And so, the palace waited. The courtiers sharpened their gossip, the minister prayed for dignity, and the king quietly planned. Each morning's laughter felt heavier than the last, pulling everyone closer to a moment when the boy's simple choice, between gold and silver, would reveal far more than anyone expected. Just when everyone thought the strange ritual had become predictable, the king decided to break the routine. One morning, instead of placing the usual gold and silver coins before the boy, the king gave a sly smile and laid out something different. In front of the entire court, he placed not 2 coins, but 3, 1 silver, 1 gold, and a dazzling jewel that sparkled brighter than either. The hall fell silent. The courtiers leaned forward, eager to see what the so-called foolish boy would do now. For the first time, the boy hesitated. His eyes shifted from the silver coin to the gold, then to the jewel that clearly outshone them both. The court buzzed with whispers. Would he finally reveal his true knowledge by grabbing the most valuable piece? Or would he stick to his pattern and choose silver again, even with greater riches lying before him? The minister's heart pounded. This was no longer about a daily game. The king was testing something deeper. A wrong move could ruin both father and son's reputation before the entire kingdom. All eyes burned into the boy, waiting for the flicker of his hand. And then, in a move that shocked the entire hall, the boy's fingers went straight for the silver coin once more. Gasps echoed across the court. The laughter that usually followed was different this time. Uneasy, nervous, and edged with disbelief. Choosing silver against gold was one thing, but ignoring a jewel for silver seemed like madness. Even the king's face darkened with surprise, his amusement giving way to sharp suspicion. The courtiers could hardly sit still. Was the boy openly mocking the throne? Was this an insult disguised as innocence? Or was there some hidden brilliance in the very choice that seemed most foolish? The minister almost stepped forward to defend his son, but he froze at the sight of the king's eyes narrowing in curiosity and doubt. The tension in the palace had never been thicker. The boy's choice had turned a playful riddle into a dangerous puzzle. By rejecting the jewel, he had forced the king to wonder whether he had underestimated him, or whether he had been challenging royal authority all along. Now, the stakes were no longer about coins. The boy's next words, or even his silence, could change the fate of his family in ways no one had imagined. The throne room was silent. Every eye locked on the boy with disbelief. The silver coin gleamed faintly in his small hand, while the ignored gold and jewel still lay on the table like unclaimed destiny. The king leaned forward, his voice sharper than before. "Tell me, boy, why silver again? Why would you reject gold? Why would you leave a jewel to gather dust?" The courtiers' whispers grew into a tense hum, as though the entire palace was holding its breath. The boy bowed his head respectfully, but his words rang clear. "Your Majesty, I could take the gold once or the jewel once, and the game would end. Yet by choosing the silver each day, I continue the game, and the silver coins keep filling my box. Others laugh, but while they laugh, I build. This is not about what shines the brightest, but about what lasts the longest." A hush spread across the court. In those simple words, the so-called foolish boy revealed a wisdom deeper than the cleverest minister could have offered. For the first time, it was not the courtiers laughing. It was their pride that felt small. Even the king, caught off guard, sank back into his seat, his expression shifting from suspicion to thoughtful respect. The minister, who had endured the sting of mockery for days, felt his chest loosen with both relief and awe. His son had turned ridicule into strength, proving that quiet success did not need applause, only patience. What looked like foolishness was, in truth, a strategy far greater than appearances could explain. And yet, just as the minister thought the moment had settled, the boy added a final twist. "But father," he said softly, glancing toward him, "the coins are only one lesson. The greater treasure is that those who underestimate me reveal their true selves while thinking they laugh at mine. Every silver coin is not just wealth. It is wisdom purchased by their underestimation." The court froze again, stunned by the layers of meaning in the boy's explanation. It was no longer just about coins. It was about humility, patience, and the art of turning mockery into mastery. The climax had arrived, and what began as a game ended as a revelation. True success doesn't need to be loud or showy. Sometimes the quietest path builds the strongest foundation, and the one who appears simple may, in fact, be the wisest of all. The king rose from his throne, his gaze fixed on the boy as though seeing him for the very first time. The hall that once erupted in laughter now drowned in silence. Courtiers sat uneasy, their mocking smiles gone, replaced with the weight of a truth they hadn't expected. For days, they had ridiculed a child, blind to the quiet wisdom he had carried within. Now, it was as though a mirror had been held up to their own impatience and pride. The minister bowed his head, but this time not out of shame. It was pride and relief, flowing together like a tide after a storm. For so long, he had questioned whether his son's choices were foolishness or brilliance in disguise. Now the answer was clear. The boy had not only preserved his dignity but had also taught an entire kingdom the art of quiet success. The king's voice finally cut through the silence. "You are not foolish," he said firmly, addressing the boy. "You are wiser than many who sit before me. You understand the value not just of wealth, but of patience, humility, and foresight. That is true wisdom." The boy bowed once more and quietly returned to his place. The courtiers exchanged glances, realizing the laughter they had shared at the boy's expense had made them the true fools. What they dismissed as weakness was actually strength disguised as simplicity. That day, the court learned a lesson far greater than any sermon or book could have taught. Success does not always roar. Sometimes, it whispers quietly and steadily until it rises above the noise. The minister walked out of the palace that evening with his son by his side, no longer weighed down by doubt. The box of silver coins was no longer just a collection of money. It had become a symbol, a reminder that it is often better to be underestimated while building something lasting than to show off and lose it all in a single moment. And so, the story closes with a message for all: don't show off. True achievement doesn't need to sparkle immediately. Quiet success, built with consistency, humility, and resilience, outshines every jewel. And those who are mocked today may be the ones whose wisdom lights the way tomorrow.